Carter Bryant tests at the NBA Combine, and there were some interesting things with where the lottery balls went.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for giving it a Locked On Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you today by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Check it out, FanDuel. All right, now we have got a lot to get to this show. We are going to talk about Carter Bryant. We are going to talk about the NBA Draft Lottery. We are going to talk about a lot of different things. But first, let's talk about a little bit about Carter Bryant and him testing at the NBA Combine. He's tested very well. I don't know that should really be a should really be a surprise to anybody, though. He measured in at 6'6", about 6'6.5", and not only that, he jumped really high as well. We're going to get to all that in a second, and he had a really, really good wingspan as well. And so there is obviously that. So first, let's talk about it. He measured in at 6'6", which, again, he was listed at 6'8", but I mean, let's be honest here. Everybody lies about where kids are. Everybody lies about where kids are going to be, what their height is. I get that. That's just par for the course. Everybody does it. I'm not really beating anybody up for that. The one thing that I will say, though, is that I think we are now at the stage, too, where that his wingspan is insane. Now, I don't know that I'm really breaking any news on that, but his wingspan is crazy. It's almost 7 foot. It's incredibly good. It's incredibly his width is great, and like I said, he's tested very, very well. And the thing about him, too, is that he's also going to do a very good job when it comes to, I think, scouts talking with him. He's a great kid. And then today he measured, or he put a vertical in at 39.5 inches, which is obviously, that is huge. He's like I said, he's a special basketball player in that regard. And I think that he is, his best days are definitely ahead of him. I think that's fairly easy to say. So there's obviously that. Now, the next aspect too that I think we need to look at and we need to talk about a little bit is, he's not playing obviously, but where is he going on draft boards? And right now he appears to be somewhere in the top 15. He's, like I said, he's just really he's going to. He's going to test he tested really well. He's going to interview really well, and I think that's just kind of the way it is. So where could he land if he stays in the NBA draft? I think that's something that we're also very curious about as well. There's a number of spots where you start seeing him show up, and you start seeing things pretty darn quickly. Now, the Mavericks got the first pick. I don't know that the Mavericks will be choosing Carter. They will be choosing Cooper Flagg. That one is, I think that one's pretty. Pretty much set in stone. And but then after that, San Antonio's got the second pick. San Antonio is fascinating because San Antonio, Carter very much feels like the kind of player that San Antonio would draft, in that he's a good kid. He's got a known skill set, and when you've got a known skill set and you're a good kid, you're generally going to be fairly you're generally going to be fairly, how do I put this? You're generally going to be fairly attractive for a variety of different people. So there's that. The Spurs are interesting. The Sixers aren't really. The Sixers really aren't the one that. Is. How do I put this? They're not going to probably go for him because you got to remember, too, in this draft, I don't care what anybody says, this draft is pretty good. I think at the top of the draft, there's a lot of really, really good players. But he is like I said, he is he's a player that won't show up there yet. But then after that, you're going to start seeing some people after that come up and be pretty big. Charlotte, don't see Charlotte. You already got Brandon Miller. You got LaMelo Ball. Plus, Charlotte's a bum franchise to begin with. We don't want Carter there. We don't want Carter in Charlotte. So there's that. But then it starts to become interesting. You've seen a couple different mock drafts where they're talking about certain players, and they're like, Utah has become one that. Now listen, if you're choosing Carter with a top 5 pick, if you're Utah, I don't know that that's necessarily going to make the. I don't know that that's necessarily going to make a ton of sense, but that is. I think that's too high. Like I said, I like Carter a lot. I still think that that's too high, though. I would not pick Carter with that at that spot. So there's that. But then after that, it becomes fairly interesting, though. Becomes fairly interesting because there are some really. That's why it's become fairly interesting. So now let's see where that next thing is with. Those next picks. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Spurs later on, but the Spurs are interesting here because the Spurs become later on. That just feels like a Carter pick, and that not only does that feel like a Carter pick, that feels like a situation where. They bring him in, and he's going to fit in very well with what they do. That is like I said, that's obviously a good thing for Carter. But I think the thing too, when you watch Carter, when you look at what he's done, you can see that he's a player that he just does things the right way. And I think that's why so many different scouts are so intrigued by him because of all the different things that he can do. He's a player that you watch him and you're just kind of like, yeah, there's probably no way that you're not going to be good. Now, again, at what level is he going to be good? I don't know, and I don't think that anybody really knows that. But you can tell, too, that this is a guy that gets basketball and that he wants to be as good as he can possibly be. And when you get somebody that can be good as they can possibly be, that's something. Now, Washington, a lot of these teams, though, are absolute train wrecks, and you don't really want, some of these guys going to Washington unless you can really avoid it. But that's another school that I think you could see possibly being a candidate for Carter because they, like I said, they've got a lot going on for them as well because they need a lot of different talent players. And I think with talent, when you're looking at the talent levels of certain players, you're, like I said, Carter, I don't know as evidently, I don't know that he's ever going to be a NBA All-Star because I don't know. I think there's some things that he's probably lacking to a certain degree. But overall, it's pretty easy to sit here and say that he's going to be a really, really good player, and that there's not a lot of reasoning for him not to be, like I said, a pretty good player. But a lot of it's going to depend too. Where does he go? And where does he go? Because again, I don't want him getting lost on the Rockets. I don't want him getting lost on the Wizards or one of these other crummy teams. I want him to be able to go someplace where they have a franchise in play where that they can get everything out of him that they can. And some of these teams, like I said, the Wizards are not one that you look at and you're like, that's going to be able to get the most out of Carter Bryant. I don't really see that one being the case. So we shall see. But then you'll go on New Orleans. Now, New Orleans is fascinating because, again, you got obviously Ingram, Zion Williamson. Probably time to put that horse out to pasture because, again, he's just not going to ever be really good enough. And the problem with Zion Williamson as well is that you watch Zion Williamson and you just kind of wonder after a while, man, do you really care about basketball? He's always going to be overweight. He's always going to be out of shape. That's always going to be a problem for Zion, is staying in shape. And is that something that you really want to deal with? I don't know. But that's kind of where it's at. So We shall, like I said, we shall see. Now, there's some other teams as well, like with Brooklyn. Brooklyn is interesting because Brooklyn, again, that's another team that needs basically everything. When you look at Brooklyn, they, that's another team that you're just kind of like, well. He could definitely play there. He's showing up on there. Now, there's another team here that is showing up all over the place for Carter that is going to be an interesting one that I think we need to talk about here. But first, FanDuel, my friends. FanDuel. Check out FanDuel. All right, here's the deal with FanDuel. All right, the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. All right, which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends build up your next bet? What would it look like? All of that stuff, and how could $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? That's pretty fun stuff. Here's the deal right now. Head to FanDuel.com. It's the perfect time. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If the bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about where we are at now in the grand scheme of things. The first thing is the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors are fascinating to me in all of this because the Raptors have a good, like I said, the Raptors have a pretty good, it's not a bad team going on there. You've got somebody like a Scotty Barnes, obviously, that can do a lot. Carter could be a good 3-point shooter there for them. It would take them a little bit, but they've actually done a fairly nice job of developing talent over the years. So I got to give them a little bit of credit. I would not be totally opposed to Carter ending up there if he does end up there. If he doesn't, maybe he doesn't end up there, we shall see. But I would not hate that by any means. If Carter did end up there, I could see him. Like I said, I could see him ending up there. So, like I said, I don't know that that's going to be the case, but I don't know that it's not going to be the case though either. Carter in Toronto does make a little bit of sense. He is like I said, he's a talented guy. And I think they're a franchise that has done a fairly nice job with developing young players. I could see that being the case. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but I could also see that being the case. So, like I said, we shall see on that one. But I do like Carter in that spot. Now you look at some of these other ones as well. Then Houston. Houston's been accumulating picks forever. Houston has been very, very good at accumulating picks, and they've shown it. I think with Houston, you know that they've done a nice job of drafting and developing young players, whether that's a Jalen Green, whether that is a Sengun or any of those guys. They've done a fairly nice job with it, so I got to give them some props. If he ends up there, the only thing is he's not going to play for quite a while, and I think that's the concern, is that he won't play. But maybe that's maybe at the end of the day, though, you're also saying to yourself, well, he's not ready to play really anyways, so why not go to a good franchise where they got good players where you can kind of figure some things out from there? I don't know, but that wouldn't be a bad spot. Portland, Chauncey Billups has done a good job there, but not, how do I put this? Portland has done a good job, and Chauncey Billups did a good job. I don't really want him in Portland, but I kind of get the gist. Then Chicago, absolutely nothing to do with Chicago. Chicago sucks. Chicago might be the worst franchise in the NBA. It is a terrible, terrible franchise. They've done absolutely nothing since Michael Jordan left. I know you had the D Rose team. I give you credit for D Rose, but other than that, you're not. This isn't a spot where you are in a good spot. So I think that we will see that. Now where is the next thing then when it comes to some of these players? Atlanta. I always forget that Atlanta exists, that Atlanta has a basketball team, because nobody knows that Atlanta exists, and nobody knows that Atlanta has a basketball team. The Hawks are a very forgettable franchise, and you kind of see why, because, again, they don't really produce much. They don't do much. Again, the Atlanta Hawks don't want him there. Now, listen, if he does end up somewhere and he ends up at San Antonio with like that 14th pick, I could totally see it. San Antonio is a very nice spot for him. I think that he could develop well there. Like I said, we'll see, but that's another one. He's gonna have an interesting decision to make, because, again, he's clearly a talented guy that the rest of this league that's going to be in high demand because of how he can play. And the fact is, too, I mean, he's a good kid. You watch a lot of these guys and you're like, all right, well, you've got some talent, but you're also kind of a scumbag, or whatever the case may be. With Carter, there is none of that. You know exactly what Carter is. You know Carter's a great dude. Not only do you know Carter's a great dude, you also know, too, that he wants to be good at basketball, and however good he can be at basketball is how good he is going to be at basketball. But like I said, he's going to be somebody that's going to take a little bit of time. So if you have the potential to, get him and basically store him for a little while, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that if I'm an NBA team, I'm looking at and I'm like, okay, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to basically take my time with him and get him better. The San Antonio Spurs can do exactly that. Again, certainly hope that Carter comes back, but the Spurs, like I said, the Spurs can do a lot of different things that will allow him to really reach his max his max potential. So like I said, we shall see. So there's obviously that. Now, where then could there be a trade involved? And what about some of these trades here in the NBA? Because there's a couple fascinating things that I think have gone under the radar a little bit that I think are maybe we should be looking at a little bit. Maybe we should be looking at a little bit more. I also don't know for a fact that Carter is, that Carter's going to stay in, but he certainly could, because, again, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be like, hey, man, stay here. I do want to talk about something, though, that I think Tommy made a massive mistake on, and I love Tommy Lloyd a great deal, but Tommy Lloyd messed this one up. But first, Monarch Money, my friends. Monarch Money. Okay, here's the deal. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Okay, that's all right. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? I do that all the time. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over finances. Monarch Money isn't just your budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop managing money and start building wealth. That's what everybody wants. Again, you can get surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, all in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Again, easy collaboration as well. Take control of your finances with monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Check it out at Monarch Money. Check it out. Again, you will thank me later on this one. And again, 50% off your first year. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we need to talk a little bit about Tommy Lloyd and Carter Bryant. Listen, I love Tommy Lloyd a great deal. I hope he's here for a long time. I will say though that he clearly didn't manage it well with Carter Bryant and Trey Townsend. I don't think that there is any way around that. Trey Townsend wasn't good. Trey Townsend, to put it mildly, was not good. And he is like I said, he was an issue. He was bad. And there was a lot of times this year where Carter wasn't playing because they had to put Trey Townsend in, and I don't really understand that. The biggest part is with Trey Townsend is that he just couldn't do anything as well as Carter. And I think that's what I think frustrated a lot of people, is that he couldn't do anything as well as Carter. And you're wondering, why in the world is this guy playing so much? Now, again, at the end of the year, Carter started playing more, but Arizona gave away a lot of games early on in the season that it didn't necessarily need to. I think of the UCLA game, for example. Carter played 9 minutes. Trey Townsend played 25. Trey Townsend had 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 turnovers. That's just not going to get it done. That's always going to be an issue, and I will never understand for the life of me why Tommy didn't realize this either. The other thing too that I think is frustrating too is that you're kind of like, all right, Tommy, we all got this. How did you not get this? And it is what it is. If he goes off to the NBA and he's a top 10 player or whatever the case, or top 10 prospect, you were playing him behind a guy who wasn't even really a Power 5 basketball player. I mean, at the end of the day, that's on Tommy. Tommy's a good dude. But one thing about Tommy is that Tommy definitely has loyalty to bad players for far too long. You look at Kirk Kriisa. Kirk Kriisa wasn't good while he was at the U of A, and he insisted on playing Kirk Kriisa. That wasn't good enough. And not only was Kirk Kriisa not good enough, but there was also other guys, too, where you're like, all right, what in the heck is going on? Kylan Boswell. By the end of the year, Kylan Boswell was clearly a problem, and you were still playing him. There was no discipline. There was nothing involved. Kylan Boswell just wasn't good enough. And then you had Jaden Bradley as well, who was just better. And then this past year, Trey Townsend is that one as well, where Trey Townsend wasn't good. Trey Townsend probably should have played 6 to 8 minutes per game. Tommy had him a lot of the time playing 25, 28 minutes per game. And the fact that he played more than Carter is still insane. I don't know how else to put it. There is no way, shape, or form where he should have been playing more minutes than Carter Bryant. That was an issue, and it's something that I think is frustrating for a lot of fans, because you just kind of wonder what could have been. Why was this the case? And I don't know that anybody really has an answer, and I think that's kind of what's frustrating about all of this, is that you wish that Tommy did have an answer. But he, he's going to play who he's going to play, and that's just kind of the way it is. But I think that's something that I would like to see Tommy learn in the future, is, that I got to play the best players. Again, my job's still to win games, and he does a very good job of it, obviously. And this is nitpicking because, again, Tommy is the man. But at the same time, I think it's also fair to say that Tommy has some interesting flaws, I guess, or just things where you're kind of like, all right, I don't get that. I don't know why you're doing that, but you're doing that, and it makes absolutely no sense. Tommy definitely does that. But I think at the end of the day, we're also kind of at the stage where you're like, all right, what is the where are we at then with this going forward? And where are we with this going forward is and I think that Tommy's just got to be Tommy's got to be better, and we shall see. But you got to play your best players, and I think that's something that was definitely that's something that should be seen. Okay, now tomorrow we're going to talk about the NBA draft lottery and everything that goes with it. The NBA draft lottery is fascinating to me because it's clearly rigged. I don't know that there's any way around it. It is clearly rigged. The Dallas Mavericks were always going to end up with that pick. They had a 1.8% chance of getting it, and I don't think that anybody really quite understands why that is the deal, but that is the deal, and I think that's just something that, is a little bit of a head scratcher for a lot of people, including myself. But on that note, though, Very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. Locked On, your team every day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Like I said, we're going to be talking all NBA draft. We're going to talk a little bit of U of A football as well, and all of that. But have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will be back with you tomorrow.